This week on Crunchweek, we're talking about Google ChromeCast, Apple's earnings, and Dev Center being hacked, and Facebook's numbers from earnings. Welcome to Crunchweek, where we talk about the most interesting stories from the week. I'm Lena Rao.
I'm Ryan Lawler.
I'm Greg Comparic.
First up, we have Apple earnings was this past week, which is always a joy. I think instead of like 10 articles about all the earnings, we had maybe like 5 or 4 or something. So, but needless to say, it was still a lot of news. The most of which is that all the numbers point to sluggish growth, and that's something that we've been talking about for some time. But it's interesting to kind of see the numbers back that up. So, what do you think about it, Ryan?
Well, I think we've reached a point where all of the products are mature. Like, there hasn't really been a huge new innovative product that they've released in the last few years. So it kind of makes sense that everything's kind of plateauing right now.
Right.
They'll probably have new stuff coming out in the fall. I don't know, Greg. Like, what do you think?
I mean, there's the
From
rumors.
the gadget standpoint.
There's the rumors of the iWatch and stuff like that, and maybe them moving into a whole new form factor altogether.
I thought the other interesting thing, though, was that a lot of the growth actually came from like old iPhones,
right.
Products that had been released years ago and were priced, more competitively for the market, as opposed to the new products. Like iPads were kind of down, and the newer iPhones didn't perform as well.
Which could be a sign, I mean, there's been all those rumors about the cheaper iPhone, right? So it could be a sign that that's actually a pretty lucrative business for them, right? I mean, what do you think?
I mean, I don't know if they should ever really bother releasing a specifically cheaper iPhone, or just continue to sell the older models.
Yeah.
Maybe polish up the case, slap a new back on there so people feel like it's a new product, but why put the R&D into something that's just to have a smaller margin?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was a big week for Apple on other news as well, right? Because they had their Dev Center was hacked. Greg, you reported on that. Give us like the skinny on what happened.
So I think it was last Thursday, the Developer Center went down. There was no real message there. It just said, we'll be back soon, don't worry. And then Friday, it was still down. People started to worry a little bit. Saturday, it was still down. And finally, I think it was on Sunday, Apple came out and said, so it looks like there's been a breach on the Dev Center, and we're investigating it. They let people know that most likely their names could have been leaked, their email addresses. Didn't look like anything really sensitive. There's no credit card data in there. You don't submit your source code to Apple, so there's no source code in there. But Apple's still taking it really seriously. They've still got the Developer Center down at this point, as far as I know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's kind of a pain, because if a developer needs the SDK, or if they need the iOS 7 beta, you can't get it. So.
Right. There's like a status page up right now, right? Just
Yeah.
like letting you know, like they're doing rolling updates of like bringing certain services back, but very few are actually up right now, I believe.
Yeah. There was a kind of interesting twist. Shortly after the story broke, a security researcher came out and kind of took credit, saying that he thinks it's his fault that the Developer Center went down, because he had submitted a bug letting Apple know, hey, you can get data here, and I've pulled a fair amount of data out of this. And then 3 or 4 hours later, the Developer Center went down. It's been down.
Really?
It's been down ever since. Apple hasn't confirmed that it was him or his bug report, or it had anything to do with him. But he's still kind of saying, I didn't do this maliciously. If it's me, I'm sorry. Like, I'm just doing my job as a security researcher. I wasn't trying to steal your data and sell it to the black market.
It's crazy.
Well, Apple wasn't the only company that reported earnings this week. Facebook, Zynga, Amazon, they all had their numbers come out this week. Facebook's was actually pretty impressive. The street seemed to like it. Their mobile numbers, they shot up. Their mobile ad revenue is now, I think, like 41% or so, or something around that, which is like a rise of 11 percentage points, which is exactly what investors are looking for, is like, how are they performing on mobile? And revenue is higher. I mean, it's just definitely interesting that the company is really coming to its own when it comes to the financials a year after the IPO.
Yeah. I find it really interesting that mobile grew so huge so fast.
Yeah.
Especially since that was the big knock
Right.
against Facebook all this time, is that they couldn't monetize mobile, and now they actually are. I'm looking forward to, I mean, not looking forward to it, but I'm interested in what happens when like mobile overtakes traditional desktop.
I know, that's going to be super fascinating. Yeah, and especially like one thing that Mark Zuckerberg had mentioned, I think in the earnings call, is that teenagers particularly are really active and growing as a segment on the site, which is a good sign for the, for the company that like this new generation beyond us here on the show, that they're actually like really engaging with Facebook, and clearly a lot of that probably is happening via mobile.
Right. Facebook also has been making a big push, not just for smartphones, but also feature phones.
Yeah.
Like they came out with some numbers about the number of feature phones that can run Facebook now, and it just seems like that's just going to continue to grow as well.
Yeah. Moving on from that, just touching on a few of the other companies, Zynga came out with some numbers. I think they beat Wall Street expectations, but did release that they are not going to pursue real money gaming in the U.S., which I think was really the big news around that, and did affect the stock price. So, we had all heard all this sort of hype around real money gaming and Zynga going into it, and especially in the U.S. after they had expanded to the U.K. with it, but I guess it's not working out.
Even internally at Zynga, it was pretty hyped up. Every Zynga employee that I had spoken to in the past year or two, they're like, yeah, we're down right now, but as soon as we break into real money gaming, especially in the U.S., we're just going to kill it. So I think I assume that they also took a pretty big hit internally, morale-wise. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the other interesting thing is they lost over the past year. They've like lost half their daily active users, which is great. Like, how do they replace them, right? I think that people were looking to real money gaming as sort of a lifeline to help boost them up again. But they've got to work on keeping the users they have before they start moving into other verticals and trying to get new users.
Well, I guess we'll see what new CEO Matic has to up his sleeve for the next year. I want to move on to actually I think one of the bigger piece of news this week, which was Google's ChromeCast, which we have here.
So the ChromeCast, this thing is cool. So this is the unit that Google loaned me for the week, and I like it enough that I've already ordered the one that will replace this one once I have to give this one back to Google. So what it is, it's a $35 HDMI dongle. You plug it into your TV, and it adds basically kind of AirPlay-esque functionality to both Android devices and iOS devices, but it's app-by-app specific. So say if you're in the Netflix app and you don't want to be watching on your phone anymore, you want to be watching on your TV. If you have this plugged in, you tap a button, say send to my TV, and that Netflix movie is playing on your TV. It works with YouTube apps, or with the YouTube app. It's going to work with Pandora and a couple other apps. It does a couple cool little things, like if you're in the YouTube app, you can do group playlists. So if you have a bunch of people and you're all like, saying, yeah, watch this YouTube video, watch this YouTube video, you can just like queue them up straight through the app and it'll play that one next. And it's neat. For $35, it's a no-brainer. It's crazy cheap. I can't.
That's really cheap. $35 is like I spend more at Whole Foods than I do.
I know, right? They're saying that it's profitable, like they're actually making money per unit, but I have to imagine that it's like a penny. Like, I mean, if they're making a penny of profit on each unit, it's still technically profitable. But I mean, the R&D they had to do on this, there's a Wi-Fi chip in there, there's a CPU in there, the packaging, the shipping, they've got to pay like licensing for using HDMI and for whatever patents are involved here. I have no idea how they're making a profit on this thing. $35.
I mean, it seems really cool. We've seen all these devices over the past several years. There's the Apple TV, there's the Roku, Google TV devices and smart TVs in general. But yeah, I mean, that basically replaces any of them and potentially makes any TV with HDMI a smart TV.
That's right.
Which is really cool.
One thing that I especially like about it, it's the main thing I like about it really, is that it makes whatever device you're using into the remote. So you don't need your remote control. You just use your iPhone to send it up, and it actually creates this interesting kind of experience that I'm not really used to. You can even control the volume and all that straight through the phone. It's pretty neat.
Cool.
So you had mentioned that there's a number of apps it already hooks into. I mean, is that like Hulu or Netflix yet, or is that like Netflix, maybe to come?
That's part of what was kind of crazy. On day one of the launch, I opened the Netflix app. It hadn't updated or anything. The button was just there. Same with the YouTube app. So they had already updated the apps and gotten them ready behind the scenes without. It leaked a little bit, but no one had noticed them in the apps in Netflix or YouTube.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So
That's really cool. I'm going to buy one.
Yeah, me too. You sold me. All right, that's all the time we have for this week. Definitely tune in next week for Crunch Week.